Starting now. Just some few logistical issues. Those of you who are parked outside and you've got your parking vouchers, make sure that you need to get them afterwards so that they can be stamped. And then number two, the report, the hard copy of the report will be given to you as soon as the chair has finished his remarks. So, Chair, I'm going to hand over to you. Maybe let me hand over to the CEO to introduce the commissioners who have got the CEO of the CRL Commission, Mr. Mr. Edward Mapata. So, Mr. Mapata, please, I'm very welcome to introduce the commissioners.
Thank you so much, Biake, our Senior Manager for Communications and Marketing. He was going to be subjected to disciplinary for not knowing the name of the CEO. Just as a point of introduction, we do have the chairperson of the commission, Professor Luka David Musoma, at the center next to the mics, and he is followed by the deputy chairperson, Dr. Sylvia Pinto, on his right-hand side, immediate right-hand side. Then I'll come back to my right. Commissioner Botha, who was also part of the investigation of the KwaSizabantu matter, followed by Commissioner Khama Mbele Khama, who is also part of the investigations. At the extreme right, we have Commissioner Dlamini. He was also part of this investigation. So, as Mbiake said, we'll hand over to the chairperson, who will then take us through the remarks of the report, and at the end, indeed, you will interact with the commissioners. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The hard copies of the report will be given to you, colleagues, as soon as the chair has finished his remarks. Thanks so much, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mkono and the CEO. Good morning to our fourth estate. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you so much. Also a team from KwaZulu-Natal, and I see, yes, I see the team is here. Most welcome. This is the report of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities in terms of Section 1852 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996, and in terms of Section 5.1 of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities Act, number 19 of 2002. The report relates to an investigation into allegation of violation of the religious rights of the congregants of the KwaZizabantu Mission Church. The investigation was conducted by the Commission following the media uproar about allegations of violation of religious rights taking place in this mission church. The mandate of the Commission. The Commission for the Promotion and the Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, here referred to as CRL Rights Commission, is a constitutional body established to strengthen constitutional democracy with specific reference to the rights of culture, religion, and language. This mandate is provided for under Section 181A, C, and 185 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996. Our mandate is further given meaning to and shaped by the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities Act of number 19 of 2002, here referred to as CRL Rights Act. The Commission has the responsibility in terms of Section 51E and G of the CRL Rights Act to investigate any matter relating to cultural, religious, and linguistic communities, and to facilitate the resolution of friction between and within cultural, religious, and linguistic communities, or between any such community and an organ of state where the cultural, religious, and linguistic rights of communities are affected. The Commission performs these functions to achieve its objects in terms of Section 4 of the Act, which includes, among others, to promote respect for and further the protection of the rights of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities, and to promote and develop peace, friendship, humanity, tolerance, and national unity among and within cultural, religious, and linguistic communities on the basis of equality, non-discrimination, and free association. Findings of the Commission. The Commission found as follows: that important issues fall within the mandate of the Department of Labor and the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration. That admission of estates and related issues, the Commission was provided with a duly executed will of one of the deceased members, whom his family members are alleging that the Mission deceived him into signing the will. The Commission finds that in the absence of any court order nullifying the will remains a valid legal document. Regarding the issues of crime, such as rape, assault, corruption, money laundering, the Commission found, among others, that indeed a rape took place in the Mission as confirmed by the Mission and the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial SAPS, that the perpetrator was convicted and is serving his sentence in jail. The Commission further found that the Mission does not have programs that assist in educating learners, students about sexual harassment and molestation. The absence thereof place the children under risk of child abuse. The Commission found further that indeed beatings as a form of punishment took place in the Mission prior to the abolition of corporal punishment in schools. However, same was stopped when the laws abolishing corporal punishment in schools came into effect. That virginity inspection was indeed practiced in the Mission as a cultural practice, as the Church admitted, but was stopped. The Commission promotes and protects virginity inspection as a cultural practice. However, it should be practiced in a manner that is not inconsistent with other rights in the Bill of Rights, as per Section 31(2) and of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996, and that it should not be imposed on anyone. That access to the graves, which are alleged to be at the Mission, are not at the Mission itself, but at Magoza or Kamagoza. The Mission indicated that they have no control over access to these graves. That the Mission is registered as a public benefit organization, therefore its affairs are regulated in terms of Income Tax Act by the South African Revenue Service. The Commission found that the teaching principles, rules, or doctrines of the mission are within the scope of freedom of religion as per Section 15 and Section 31 of the Constitution. The Commission found that the mission could have heard some of the complainants or former members with its practices at that time. The same was also admitted by the mission in their submission to the Commission. The Commission also found that for complainants, witnesses, to come forward and relate their painful experiences due to the practices of the mission, even decades after they took place, is an indication that those complainants still carry the pain of the past and the hurt they feel was done to them by the Commission, despite some allegations not having been proven. Now we come to the recommendations. The Commission, therefore, makes the following recommendations. That employment and labor-related matters be reported to the CCMA and the Compensation Fund. That estates-related issues on wills, deceased estates and assets, should the family wish to dispute the validity of the will, such disputes must be reported to the Office of the Master of High Court in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. That alleged criminal matters such as rape, assault, corruption, murder, money laundering be reported to the South African Police Services. That the mission should work together with the Department of Social Development to develop and implement programs on child protection matters, including awareness on child abuse, neglect, and exploitation as soon as possible in order to mitigate abuse of children. That for any form of corporal punishment, any form of corporal punishment, if still practiced within the mission, it must be reported to the South African Police Service. That virginity inspection, ukuhlolwa, as a cultural practice, must be performed in the mission. May be performed in the mission on those who volunteer to partake in the practice, but should not be imposed on anyone. That families of the graves located at Magoza or Kamagoza, which is disputed, that they are located at the mission itself, have the right to access their graves. Should the family experience any difficulties or be denied access to the graves by whoever has the control over access to such graves, they should report the matter directly to the Commission for Intervention. That disputes over lack of accountability and compliance on PBO laws be reported to the South African Revenue Services. That any religious practice in the mission which is illegal or against the law and cause harm to members of the mission and the mission's school learners be reported to the South African Police Services, as it would fall outside the scope of Section 15 and Section 31 of the Constitution. The mission is to apologize to the complainants and/or former members for the hurt which they could have caused as a result of the practices of the mission. But most of all, a reconciliation between the mission and former members who have been hurt by the past practices of the mission be facilitated for the purposes of peace and unity. The Commission is willing and open to facilitate such reconciliation in order to promote and develop peace, friendship, humanity, tolerance, national unity among and within cultural, religious, and linguistic communities on the basis of equality, non-discrimination, and free association. In conclusion, it is worth noting that in conducting its investigation on allegation of violation of cultural, religious, and linguistic rights of communities, the Commission has the powers to call the respondent to appear before it to answer to such allegations. Should the respondent fail to appear before the Commission, the Commission can issue summons in terms of Section 2 to the respondent, 7.2, to appear before the Commission. In the event that the respondent still fails to appear before the Commission, even after service of the summons, the Commission can report the respondent to the South African Police for defeating or obstructing the cause of justice. Whoever, where dispute does not fall within the mandate of the Commission, such is referred by the Commission to the relevant institutions or organs of state for such institutions to exercise their powers. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I don't know if there are other members of the Commission who might need to add anything before we take questions from the members of the media. We will take about, when we start with a certain number of questions, and then get responses, and then have the second round and third round. Let me just see those that would need to raise questions. Please mention your name and the media house that you represent. I'll start here next to me, then yes, and then I'll come to that side.
Thanks very much, Commissioner and the members of the panel. My name is Blessing from KwaZulu-Natal, and I will start by thanking the Commissioner for relating and analyzing the report. But my question will be maybe two questions. One is that this matter of KwaSizabantu Mission was on the media. I think all the media covered the issue. But what you found when you were there at the mission, comparing what you were hearing from the media side, where the mission, these two sides were mentioned, did you find that it was true what the media was saying, or you find another picture when you were there? When you were visiting the mission, meeting the church, the congregation. Number two is the point of religious, as I know that the Commission is representing also the religious and culture. When you are now looking at the mission, the issue of KwaZulu-Natal Mission, I'm not only speaking about KwaZulu-Natal Mission, but are you able to protect the religious grouping in South Africa, all of them, from the media, attacking from the attacks from the media, or speaking about these issues about the religious groupings, which maybe sometimes they are speaking or writing about it without even visiting the place and see for themselves what is happening there in that place. So my question is just that is Commission able to protect the religious groupings in that sense, if there are some writings or reporting about these institutions without maybe seeing for themselves what is happening there? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Rosie Goldinian from the CBC News. Do you think that your findings and your recommendations after, a 3-year investigation, countless witnesses coming to the stand, and just the amount of emotion and sadness and heartache that we've witnessed since the story broke in 2020, do you think that your recommendations go far enough to hold the mission accountable, 1, and 2, provide the justice and the solace? I suppose solace would be an emotive word, but I suppose justice would be a better word. The justice that the complainants so desperately feel they need. Do you think it goes far enough? And obviously, I understand it's also based on the scope of which you're allowed to investigate and obviously provide recommendations. And I just wanted to clarify: did you decide whether or not you were going to call the mission a cult or not? Thank you.
Thank you. The third question, then we'll come back to the commissions. Yes, Ivan.
Good day, it's Ivan from News 24. I just wanted to know, why did it take the CRL so long to release the report? Also, why was it necessary for the victims to approach the High Court in an attempt to compel them to release the report? And in essence, what were the main and most important findings, and what happens next?
Thank you. Let me take Pumla, you're the last one, then the commissioners can respond.
Thank you. My name is Pumla CRL. Could the chair please confirm the rape conviction? When did it take place? When was the person involved convicted? Secondly, there were issues raised about people raised against, held against their will. What did the commission find around that? And the apologies, can we just get a sense of what the apologies are about, and what are they for, and for which period?
Thank you. Chair, I'll come back to the next round of questions. Chair and commissioners, you can respond to the set of questions later.
Well, let me start off. Thank you so much for the questions raised. The first question from Ikwezi: what did we find new which is contrary to what was reported? We can only comment on what we have investigated. What people said, it's not what is within our plate. We are making a determination on what we found. And what I've just read is precisely what we had, found, and were reporting. Okay. Whatever others have said, I don't know what influenced them, but This is the picture we're giving. All right, I think that says enough in terms of your two questions. The second question is from Tombimia, whether the recommendations go far enough to provide a sense of justice to the complainants. Remember that when you investigate, it is the outcome of what you found which informs what you say and what you report. Our view is that we are not a court of law. Hence, some of the recommendations here clearly indicates where justice could be sought if complainants feel very strongly as they did, very strongly, because some of the allegations we could not prove because we don't have the instruments to do that. Only the court can do that. So we are trying to be honest to the dictates of the Act. The Act says to us, where your powers end in terms of cooperative governance, you refer to the organs of state. And it is this that justice, in our view, will be pursued. So this is not the end, because we're making recommendations for steps to be taken so that justice could be could prevail, so to speak. The second question is whether we determine from the very beginning, did we agree we are going to hold the mission to account? I mean, that would be really not a good way to approach a subject. I'm a researcher myself, I'm an academic. I don't conclude before I do a research. I can't say when a matter has risen, I'm going to hold that person to account. It is the outcome of the investigation which leads to holding a person to account. So I think this is the approach of the CRL. We don't investigate to hold people to account. But if what we found is necessitate holding people to account, so we do so. So that's the... I'll also allow other commissioners to take on issues. For example, why it took so long for us to release the report, and the date of the jailed incumbent, the person, and of course the issue of apologies. Any other commissioners? If not, I'll take it.
Any commissioners? Deputy Chair, then we'll come to Commissioner Board.
This mic.
Yeah, you'll have to move it in front of the board.
This one.
This one. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Use 24.
I would take the last question on the apologies. Why do we... Okay, who has to apologize and why do they have to be apologies? If we look at the allegations that were put to the mission, one of the allegations was that many parents disowned their children at the mission, mainly because families were forced to choose between the loyalty to the church and the loyalty to their families. So anyone who was charged by the mission was expelled from the mission, and members who stayed in the mission were not allowed to communicate or to interact with that member of the family. So this to them, they felt that it was breaking of good families, and many children who are roaming around may be of the consequences of such families that were broken during that time. So the apology that was requested by the complainants, they said, we don't want anything from KwaSizabantu. What we want to hear from KwaSizabantu is to hear KwaSizabantu apologizing because it has destroyed our lives. Some of us, our parents died and were buried. We were never given a chance to say goodbye to them. Thanks.
Thank you. Let me allow Commissioner Walker if they want
Okay, when it comes to the longevity of the investigation, I don't want to sound cliched, but we had COVID in the middle of it, so that did delay a lot of the processes that we were involved in. And unfortunately, as a commission, which we lament quite often, is we're a very limited institution, and we have, as commissioners, tried to change that with a certain level of success, but because of the restraints of the size of the institution, it takes a lot, because KwaSizabantu wasn't the only investigation, and we had to make sure that we gave it the proper attention that it required, because there was a lot of media around it, and there was a lot of heat around this, so we didn't want to just act flippantly with the investigation, so we thought time was rather important in the process. When it comes to the cult aspect, what we did find was that in the beginning, the Commission did appear to be centralized in its control, and they did have a bit of a persecution take when it came to the institution. But what we have found is that centralization has been dissipated. They've got a larger committee that is now in charge of it. It's less controlled by individuals. And I think, but we have to take into consideration what we see now. When it comes to the institution. Yes, whatever happens in the past and the recommendations have been made, that if there were criminal acts, it needs to be reported to the police. But what we see now is an institution that does care about its members and is trying to be more open in the control mechanisms within the institution.
any further comments?
Maybe just on that issue, on that question that Advocate Dota responded to, the delay of the report. The issue of COVID has been mentioned, but also in terms of people who were identified to be directly responsible. We had to make sure that we are able to interview or engage those individuals. One of them had a long period of illnesses. So we had to accommodate that because we could not release a report where some of the alleged individuals have not been interviewed or engaged. So it took some time because of some of these appointments, which in terms, when you receive a legal letter and a legal certificate from the hospital that this person will take some time in hospital, you can't force to conclude a report on the basis of that. So there were a number of challenges we encountered in the process. It was not just a purposeful delay on our own, but it was because of certain things that we took into account in order to make sure that we have a complete report that is presented to the nation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Khan.
Thank you, Mpiake, and good morning. I think on the issue of, I think it's SAPC, if I'm not mistaken, people held against their will. The unfortunate part is that with members that we've interviewed or people that we met with that were alleged to be held against their will, in us engaging with them, they showed no sign, of them being there by force. When they appeared in us, they were showing their happy face and they were telling us how good it has been for them to be in the mission. So they gave us a sense that they were not held against their will, and they are happy to be there. That's what we found as a commission.
Thank you. Can I ask the CEO to make a comment before I open for the other questions?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner, sir. Just to say the question around the South African policies in the case, the Commission at this stage will not be able to respond to that, but we can reply to the South African policies for further details that you may be looking for. The other one has to do with the first set of questions, the first person who asked the question, whether after investigations the Commission is in a position to protect the religious sector. Of course, in attempting to answer that question, we can say there's a lot of positive things that the religious sector as a whole is doing, and those that are actually doing the wrong are not a majority. And we as a Commission, our mission is to try and align the minority to the majority, so that our job of promoting and protecting the religious rights of communities becomes easier. That does not mean that there's nothing that is not happening within the religious sector that is concerning to us in the communities. It is always there, but the Commission is trying to correct the current situation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll take the second round of questions. I saw some hands. Just to name the media house, I saw 3 hands or 4 hands. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, 1, 2, 3. Good start.
Good morning. My name is Susan Purin. I have 2 stories coming close about KwaZulu-Natal. Different from the mainstream road. So my question is to you. You made it clear that what your mandate is as the Commission. Why did you entertain the complaints of people that would not fall into your domain? You can't rule on them. Didn't you know in advance that they were complaining about rape, money laundering, etc.? If that's not your mission, why did you entertain them? That's what I want to ask. So publicly, broadcasting it, and the areas. That's my question.
Thank you. Can you take the second question?
Good morning. My name is Gerda Potgieter, and I am from Devoted Magazine. Firstly, I do not have a problem that you took so long for the information, because now nobody can say that it was a wishy-washy investigation. My interest is from an academic point of view, because I'm busy with a doctorate on media ethics. So that was how I became involved. So my book on the subject will be released soon. So my question to you is, now that we know the truth, is there any recourse for the mission in this regard? In other words, do you have a mandate to rule that mainstream media, and especially News 24, must now retract the boycott and the allegations and claims? That's the first question. Can I ask another one?
Yes.
So my second question would be, did you consider the thousands of positive stories of people that have been helped over the years, and also the positive narrative of alternative media like Newsweek, like Gateway News, like there's so many that has published good stories about life-changing events at KwaZulu-Natal, if you considered those as well in your investigation? Thank you.
There's a hand up. Thank you.
It's Khawkhan from the Sunny Times Live. I just, obviously we can agree that people go to different religious organizations for different reasons, and not all of them are gullible or stupid. More people are desperate, right? So I just wanted to find out from a general perspective, in your work, what have you found to be the key, if not the other many keys that contribute to people going to these questionable religious organizations? And obviously people have to come to you with complaints, but do you have a mandate as the CRL to have, to be on the lookout for organizations, obviously religious organizations that could be harmful to people? Or are you only working on the basis of complaints? And how far-reaching and practical are your campaigns, if you have any, or awareness in regards to the impact of these organizations on people? And yeah, I think that's it.
I saw a hand here. The hand. Oh, that's fine. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. The media house.
Yes. Thank you so much for an opportunity. I'm Paramani Mkwanazi on Radio Crazy. Thank you so much to the commissioners for the report. My concern as well would be, it's somewhat related to the other journalist that has just asked the question. We broadcast for KwaZulu-Natal Midlands areas and northwest areas of the province. During the time when the reports, especially from there was a big cry from the community that stays close to the mission, that benefits either in terms of jobs or a lot of support that the mission is giving to the community. It sounds like sometimes when these things are happening, the voices of local people that will give a different perspective are not given an opportunity, because at the end it's like it was only, let me just say, the complainants and the mission. But the local voices, people that can give a different view, and they stay next to the mission, they've got a lot to say. They kept on phoning to the radio station, why the commission does not give us an opportunity. Only hear people that are staying far from the mission, while we are close by. So the question is, does the commission see the need to also involve people? Let me just say, in this case, two parties, that's what I'm saying, complainants and the mission, maybe to leave them aside and also hear people that are close to the institution, or where the institution says, the people that the institution is serving.
Thank you, Parliament. Can we get the responses?
Let me take the last one, as other commissioners will be thinking. You see, the case of KwaSizabantu came to the attention of the media, from the attention from the media about what was happening there. And we sought to meet the people who were affected. And the people who are affected are the ones who actually lead the charge. And the party that is affected in the equation was the mission, or is the mission. Now, it's very difficult to go and hunt people and say, come and tell us what you feel about the situation. It's very difficult. And you said rightly that you were called, but we were not called. Nobody called us. Now you assume, was imagine, there is a community out there that is interested in the matter. But from which perspective? Which requires the objectivity on your side. In fact, I did not expect that question from you. Because you must, from the objectivity side, when you are confronted with matters of allegations coming from an individual, do you call other people to come and witness who were not even there because of their interest or particular interest? I don't think that's the way to go. So we're dealing with what came on our plate, dealing with the complainants and the mission. That's where we're at. Hence, we're giving this report. Otherwise, we'll be going for hearsay. You know what it means to be a witness? It means one who has seen, not somebody who has heard, somebody who said, I have seen it, I've experienced it. So hence, the position of the commission. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Porter.
Okay, when it comes to the knowing what was going to be said and the public nature of the hearings. We're a public institution, and everything we do is in public, unless, of course, as you are well aware of, unless a witness didn't want to be known and didn't want to be seen, they were given that opportunity not to. But we're a public institution that is trying to educate the society at large, and our responsibility as an institution lies on both sides. It lies in the protection of religious institutions and the protection of religious communities or those people that practice their religion. So when we hear about these matters, we are approaching it on that basis. And that is why we give both sides the opportunity to actually air their side of the story in a public manner as well. Some of the people chose not to, and even some of the people from the mission chose not to air in public, and that is their right. But as much as we can, we want to be transparent as an institution. Now, when it comes to a lot of the allegations, we didn't know exactly what the allegations were when we started calling witnesses. That's why you'll see we didn't just have one, we had witnesses that we invited, the witnesses came in, and on most of those occasions, that's the first time we heard the story. There were one or two where it wasn't, but the majority is the first time that we heard the story. So we did not know what was going to happen prior to us hearing the evidence, because we didn't want to be predisposed to any prejudice as investigators. So we tried to remain neutral in the situation. All we got was media reports and those sort of aspects, but we have to try and look at it objectively, and that's the approach we take. Anybody else?
The issue of media ethics.
Wait.
The issue of media ethics, which you are interested in, I think maybe your book will help. The media, it's about dissemination of information. And we must be very grateful, because society is educated through dissemination of information. Now, it requires people who think critically to assess and evaluate the nature of information they receive. But all of us may not be endowed with the skill of critical analysis and assessment of information. Now, it will be difficult to say what did the media said in relation to KwaZizabantu is something that we must make a call on. We can't. We make a call on the basis of what we have done. If what we have done will assist people understand the situation of the mission better, so be it. That's what we're doing. We are not entering into the media fray, how they do their business, because we'll be interfering in their business. Let them do it. But the purpose of the commission is to make sure that we protect and promote the rights of those communities where they are infringed, where they are violated. That's our role. We are not about destroying communities, cultural communities, religious communities, linguistic communities. We are about promotion. It is important to understand our role is to promote. And hence, the educational trajectory that we have taken as an approach in this particular matter. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, President.
Thank you. Any comments from the commissioners for the recourse?
Yes.
Legal recourse.
Okay. I think for me, it's where you're asking why we have to entertain these complaints. Sometimes it's very difficult. The Commission, as the Chair has alluded, that we stand to promote and protect the rights of cultural, religious and linguistic communities. Most of the time, these abuses happens within the religious space or cultural space. So you find communities obviously would come to the Commission to report. And the Commission, in assessing and analyzing these complainants, will then be able to refer them accordingly where they're supposed to be referred. So we are bound to listen on what they are saying. We cannot chase anyone that enters the door or that wants to say something to the Commission, or wants just because they feel this is the best space where they can be themselves, where they can, talk about anything. So for the Commission, we then, after assessing and then refer these matters to different organ of states. So that is the reason why we entertained to listen to them. They needed an ear, someone to listen to.
Can I just ask something about that? Are you contacting them personally to say, we heard your complaint, we're not the right forum, you specifically must go to the police? Or is it just what they're hearing here? That's what I want to know. Because they came very publicly, and will you refer back to them to say that?
Maybe in response as well, we have met with SAPS in the KZN. Most of the cases were reported to the police, so that we know we've met, and they were confirmed that there are cases that are still, under investigation as well. So I think out of this, the Commission, we still have to speak to the complainant, but the cases are being referred to all of them.
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Just on that as well, I just wish to reiterate there's still a reconciliation process that has to take place. That's still one of our primary objectives. So as part of that process, where we're trying to reconcile the mission with those complainants, there will be an interaction that still needs to take place. And it's a very important part of the process, to heal the pain that people have felt in the past, because like we said, there were things that happened in the past that at the time, taken into context of the time, were done within a legal concept, within a legal principle, and might have hurt people that the emotional scars still need to be healed, but there's not much you can do from a legal point of view. And as for the recourse, when it comes to what the media says, there are methods of recourse against false statements made by media, and those processes need to be taken because the media itself recognizes that it too needs to be held accountable, and that's why they have institutions that hold them accountable. So those processes should be followed because that's part of the democratic process.
Maybe also, Commissioner Potter, to add on, other complainants did not want to go or to lay, charges. They felt that they just want to vent out, and however, they would not want to open any cases. In that event, we've managed to contact and met with the provincial government, the KZN provincial government, to be of assistance in matters of psychosocial support in an event where they would want to further assist it in terms of counseling. So they are on board as well, on board with this investigation.
There was a question by will you comment?
No.
Okay.
Yes, however, you raised the issue whether we are on the lookout of institutions that are doing harm to our people, or whether we simply wait for complaints to come to us. We are both active and reactive. Where matters come to us, we entertain those. But we're also very vigilant in terms of identifying where challenges are. We have our media team here, which collaborates, I think, with the mainstream media. Because on a daily basis, the media is uncovering things which we can't uncover as a result of the size of our organization. So they come to our attention, And as we talk now, we just heard about the issue of of people who are breaking the marble stone in graves to use them as table, you know. It's an important issue of investigation, but it's a collaborative issue because we cannot be almost everywhere. We are located in Johannesburg because of lack of resources to have offices in regions and provinces. So we are quite limited. But our aim is to make sure that we don't only hear, but we participate in discovering what is actually happening and deal with those in terms of education, in terms of helping people to understand what nation building is all about.
Yeah, maybe just to add on that before, if a matter is raised in whatever context and the Commission becomes aware of that, either through committee reports or complaints or media, then the Commission will look at that and make a determination, after which then the Commission will do its own investigation to come up with the outcome of whatever that issue was about. Commissioner Boyd.
Also, the way we approach matters, we try and ensure that we don't remain ambulance chasers. You know, we don't want to end up in that situation where we just look at one matter to try and resolve that one matter. We look at everything on a holistic basis. So we try and come up with recommendations and policies that, for instance, when it comes to access of graves, we've come up with those recommendations that we've made to the agricultural department that will hopefully solve those problems so that we don't have to keep running after them. So that approach becomes a proactive approach. And there's many things that we've tried to do. As you know, as a commission, we tried to look at how to see if we could get the church to regulate itself, which you know, we still try and push to try and be proactive so that we can resolve these issues. But obviously, there's always a bit of reticence from certain groups. So the approach is definitely a proactive and a reactive approach.
Can I ask a question? Thank you for your indulgence. I asked about the factors contributing to people being attracted to this
Why do people go to some of these institutions that end up abusing you? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. What
are those things that make people do it?
It's very difficult to pinpoint at one single factor. There are multiplicity of factors, one of which is faith. When you believe in something, it doesn't matter who tells you otherwise. You pursue it. And we've seen in our investigation that there are people who would not move an inch on what they believe, whether it's right or wrong. And some would contribute to, will say this is some kind of gullibility, but I don't think so. It's not gullibility. It's conditioned by a faith system that one holds. Because there are two ways of understanding faith. Faith as a system that is uncritical. But I believe in a critical faith, because God is not uncritical God. So, but you need to endow that for people to ask questions on what they encounter on a daily basis and make choices. Because we're not created like zombies or like robots. The freedom that we have is also the freedom to choose what we must do or not do. So it's quite complex. I'm not answering the question, but I'm just showing the complexity of the question that you have asked. Some would say it's because of poverty. Some would say because of frustration. All a number of permutations may come into the equation. Okay.
Thanks. Perhaps, Chair, we could entertain a question further beyond this, based on the previous investigations that we did. on the psyche of the nation in terms of why people go to such institutions that would be intended for another occasion. Pumla, can we get your question?
Thank you, Mr. I'll just like to probe further the power dynamics that, they naturally exist in any system. But here, I think they are even more pronounced because they are communities that are dependent on the church. And just to demonstrate that, we sit here, we have we're drinking water from a well from, provided that the church generates revenue from. And if you are going to be, I think, to be looking at issues of abuse, corporal punishment, and even where the families having been torn apart, you are dealing with something that is entrenched, and also we must admit that we're dealing with people that are fearful. What measures are in place to guarantee the victims who have come forward and say, I have been wrong, outside the scope of the CRL? What support is given to them? Because you, first of all, went to, there are cases that are with the police, and I'm sure you've covered new cases in your hearings. And what sort of support and I don't know, a guarantee are you giving to victims that you are going to be heard in dealing with this powerhouse that is the life and blood of the community?
I think the contradiction is what you have just said. We are drinking this water. And then it's a contradiction. But remember, it's a business transaction. When we embarked on this, it was before we even transacted on the water. We didn't transact it. We didn't know. We just focusing on the plight and the complaint of the people. Indeed, the issue of historic entrenchment of fear was much more demonstrable when people said, we don't want to be identified. Please hide our identity. Some said, if they know about us, it will be a problem. Now, we didn't understand what it is behind this. And you're saying it's a system. And our view is that this investigation, in a sense, has begun to say something to the system that if you want to do something that is welcomed, acceptable, constructive, this is how we must do it. And of course, our recommendations here are assisting the mission to do things differently. We may understand its historicity, but with a new environment, and we're hoping that this will construct KwaZulu-Natal into a new home. A system will begin to say, now, I think let's do things differently. That's our understanding. I know it's difficult to deal with a system, because the only way to deal with a system is to create a new system that is better than the previous system. That's the only way. But we are hoping that the new members, and who have heard us talk about a constructive way of being a church in an environment of democratic environment, this will be something they can hold on. Of course, the issue of social assistance, we have already talked to the government departments to assist, where we identified some of the names who were willing. Some of them could not give our names, but those who were willing were actually, at the point of interview, we related to make sure that we refer to the organs of state to assist. It's important. We are here to educate. We are here to educate. I think that must be understanding. And which is why our conclusion with regard to reconciliation, it must be something that gets communicated again and again. You know why reconciliation? The word reconciliation comes from Latin, concilium. Concilium means an assembly. Now, to reconciliate means to bring people who were at some point together in the assembly, who for one reason or the other, they walked out. They were estranged for different reasons. So when you reconcile, you bring them back to the assembly. This is the recommendation we're making. Bring them back, or they choose not to come back, but the assembly is open for anybody to come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll take the last questions. If any,
would you like to maybe?
Questions?
Can I add on the chair? Thank you. I think I would want to also to point on what the chair earlier in his presentation under the recommendation 4.4 that the Commission also recommended that the mission should work closely with the Department of Social Development in answering the question that if they work closely, because in a long, from where they were to where the Commission is recommending, we want to see the department hands-on with KwaSizabantu, working close together, because that's where children are. And hopefully your issues of abuse and the awareness, on children and how to mitigate all these abuses will be on the forefront. We have already engaged with the department, the DST, to work closely with KwaSizabantu, and hopefully the power that you are talking about will also be closely looked at on how children are being handled or catered for in that space.
Maybe I think you answered the question with clarity. What would you say is the major finding? Is KwaSizabantu a cult? Because there's already reports in the news now about what your major finding is. And it's not about the cult, it's that KwaSizabantu has to apologize.
You see, the use of semantics, sometimes the use of language, it's good if you understand its complexity. What is a cult? Is cult bad? There is an abuse of the word cult in the sense that a cultic environment is where one takes over as an authority and dictates to the community, and even stop people from going outside to relate and to be in contact with other people. Okay? It's an abuse of the word cult. Cult is a positive word. Yeah, it's a positive word. But there is an abuse of the concept by the behavior of individuals, which is why when we talk about regulations, many people tend to believe that you can regulate the religion. You can't regulate the religion. Religion is an intangible thing. You can't touch it. It's like the Holy Spirit. Can you regulate where the Holy Spirit must go? You can't. But you can regulate the behavior of individuals whose actions are hurtful to others under the claim of a particular influence. That you can regulate. Okay?
Thank you. I think we've come to the last one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to thank the Commissioner and the panel first because of balancing the talk. When I was listening to the Chair now speaking about other projects that are being made in the mission, like now he's got a Aquila in front of him, the water. And that was the main thing that, as with the media there, the people who are working inside the premises of the mission, there's Aquila, there's other projects that are there. They were just saying, now, when this thing is happening, what about us? we are going to lose jobs. That's why the government of KZN, that time it was Premier Zigalala, who sent the team to the mission to go and check there. And then they found many things there, as you in your recommendation, you wrote it down, I think you were right, because they were there, they saw themselves, for themselves, that now people are going to lose their jobs. Now, I'm thanking you because you are able to balance the things now. That yes, maybe there might be some things that were coming up, but now the projects, the people, now there is something people were saying, there is something good that the mission is doing there. Besides what we hear, but now there is something good that is coming out from that mission. But then, thank you very much. The Department of Health, Social Development was there, the Department of Labor was there, the Premier's office was there, and many of them, they were there. They came, like you came. Okay. Thank you very much.
But listen, let's listen to one thing. Whatever good you may do, make sure it does not have a corresponding harm.
Yeah.
Because the harm will overshadow the good.
Yeah.
So you must make sure that you can't say, I'm doing good and we are hurting other people.
Exactly.
You see? So there must be that balance. And we did not go in there to try to bail out because people are benefiting from the institution. We went there because we're looking at the issues of justice. Okay? The complaint that the people brought, that's what led us there. And what has come out here is not an attempt to whitewash or whatever the case may be. No. The issue is that let institutions that are in the name of the Most High do what is right for the people of South Africa. That is the message.
I think with that, colleagues, we have come to the end of this, but I do need to say to the members of the media that we have heard from the recommendations going forward, the issue of apology, the issue of reconciliation. So we will still engage with you when it comes to that particular part. So the report is available here, so please take a copy for yourself. And then the contribution is also for the dessert, so you are free to have lunch before you go. And then in terms of your tickets, parking tickets, just make sure that you go to the reception and get it stamped so that you don't have to pay. Thank you very much for the time. This person is now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done. What do you think? What?
Thank you so much.
Well done, Prof.
Thank you, Commissioner Botha. Well done, Commissioner Botha.
Thank you.